Hey, what's up, guys? I'm RoberOnocle, or as you better know me, Rob, and I'm here with my friend Ron. Yeah, let's not get that confused. Hey, Ron.
Hello, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking. And we're here tonight to talk about 3D Zelda games. Now, this is something I've actually wanted to talk about for quite a while because I'm a pretty big 3D Zelda game fan. You might have got that hint if you follow me on Twitter, which I'm pretty sure nobody here but like three people. Or
I mean,
yeah, there's only like a handful of people in the server
3D.
that actually follow
I'm
me on Twitter.
probably I'm probably better versed with 3D Zelda, so
No, yeah, and that's why I picked
yeah,
you because you
that
know your stuff in it.
does for to a degree. Yeah, there are some games I don't remember as well, or Skyward Sword. I'm not even sure if I remember if I beat it, but I remember liking it as far as I gotten it. Yeah. Anyway,
I mean that's fine because sometimes I just try to forget about Zelda stuff too. Because like if you ask me like, hey, what was the such and such in A Link to the Past or Phantom Hourglass, I'd probably just like, you know, it's one of those things. I mean, I'm a
yeah.
huge Zelda nerd, but I can't remember everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. So
And it's no
anyway,
big, but
well,
Keon over here. I guess I'm the only 2D Zelda fan.
I guess we'll just. I mean, I've played some of them, and I do appreciate them. I guess I always sort of appreciated how much more diverse the 3D games are.
Yeah, the
It's
3D
hard to
games tend
truly.
to move a little way further from
It's
the
hard to
traditional format.
no no two games actually really feel like, and all of them give a sort of different experience from what I remember.
Right, right.
Anyway, as for the questions, well,
All right, let's get on to them. All right, so the first question for tonight: what is your favorite 3D Zelda title? Nice and easy.
yeah, it's pretty easy. I think for me, it's probably Ocarina, but that's just a personal pick for me.
Wait, you're not allowed to like Ocarina of Time in 2017? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's the it's the most overratedest game ever. Listen to, like Aaron Hansen's our god, and we should all just listen to him.
As a
and
YouTuber, I'm not allowed to
or,
voice my exact thoughts on Aaron Hansen, but let's just say yeah, they aren't the nicest. But
yeah, I mean, I don't hate him as a
oh no, I don't
person or
hate the
anything.
guy. No, no, no.
I just can't. I just
Yeah,
can't watch his content
yeah.
um constantly. But as for, I mean, the Zelda sequelitis, as a diehard Ocarina fan, there were parts I could understand, parts and parts that made me that got sort of a face palm reaction out of me, all completely different intervals, you know.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
like
Oh, by
like
the
I
way, just
agree
really
with.
quick, you know, you said a little earlier that Ocarina of Time is your favorite Zelda game, or favorite 3D Zelda
Yeah,
game. At least I don't know if that's exactly
yeah,
your favorite,
favorite 3D. Yeah,
but you know, for your favorite 3D, so why is that?
I think I've always really liked the sort of blend for story and gameplay. It had that, how should I explain? It's hard for me to explain, but I really like how it started, for one, how with the Deku Tree, and how they made you play out trying to save him as the first dungeon and whatnot. Let's see. I also even kind of like the more Metroidvania-esque progression in the overworld, at least. Like when you get in Kokiri Forest, you have access to the Lost Woods, and you can see and you could kind of see the forest temple from it, but you don't have the appropriate item to get there yet. For one, I think as for Hyrule. as for Hyrule Field, you can visit Lake Hylia and see that there's a temple there that you can't get to yet. You can even get to Gerudo Valley, and you obviously get the sort of hint that you're not supposed to be there, but like there's still the sense of direction. Like you're still told to go to Hyrule Castle and see Zelda, and I think it's sort of the best mix they could have gotten at the time of like not of like sort of non-linear exploration gameplay, but still like a sort of sense of direction. And as for the adult world, it's also pretty open. There's a lot, like you can do some dungeons out of order, but there's also like a lot of upgrades you can nab before you doing any of the dungeons. If you like change your playstyle somewhat. Like you can get the Goron sword early on. You can get the first three warp songs early on. Let's see, Epona as well. The hook shot you kind of have to get because the game nudges you there. You can also get
Yeah, they kind of do.
you can also get the fourth bottle. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry if I sound like I have a hard time explaining it. I actually
Hey, it's
am
totally fine.
writing.
I stutter all the
I
time on
actually
here.
I have a review of the game in the works, and hopefully I can explain what all I like about it better. And I do think, and yeah, I mean, even the pause, even like the adult dungeons, there were parts of it. I felt like there were parts of it that you could technically quote unquote break by doing it a certain way, but it never felt like you were breaking the entire dungeon or anything like that. Like with the wall of death and the spear, take the wall of death and the spear temple, for instance. How you could just kind of how like you could just kind of long shot your way up there if you know.
Hey, really quick, you cut out. Could you repeat that about the long shot and the wall of death?
Yeah, the wall of death and spirit temple, the one with like the spikes at the left and right ends and parts of it move left and right. That wall.
Yeah, I'm sure anybody who played
Maybe
Ocarina of Time or played through enough of it probably knows what you're talking about.
maybe maybe like if for the podcast when you get to uploading it you can edit in a you can like look up I might send you like a picture of it. You can edit that in when I'm talking about it or not. I don't know. Like if you want to, I guess.
Okay.
And even like with the forest temple in that room with the frozen eyeball that you need to get like a perfect shot at using the arrow, like shoot the torch and then the arrow with a perfect shot. That can be broken if that can technically be broken if you have Din's fire, but you have to like really like think about the puzzle in order to do that. Like I know you're technically breaking the game, but it's still pretty satisfying to
Hey, Windows 10, I
actually
don't care. Stop. I'm sorry. Keep talking. Windows 10 is ruining the podcast. The recording, anyway.
oh I mean stuff like that. I mean it's technically breaking the game, but it's not also not really it's not like you're breaking the entire dungeon. This is like the kind of stuff that's only for like experts of the game to figure out. It's not like readily obvious to figure out like most of Breath of the Wild is. Um,
Uh oh.
they're just sort of I feel like in that sense Ocarina does strike a good balance, and there's other puzzles like this. Like there's even like you can even throw the Anubis puzzles in there because technically you can kill all the Anubises with Din's fire before doing any of the Anubis puzzles. And once you know to do that, yeah, you don't have to actually do any of them. There's even like with the fire temple, you can it's perfectly beatable without the dungeon map. You technically need you and like that getting to the dungeon map though is like the only thing you need the crossbow for when you actually look at the dungeon, but like so it is so I think that is one way they made it possible to do the fire temple before the forest temple. I mean, this all sounds really inconsequential, but at the end of the day, it was enough to make me keep coming back to Ocarina. Like it's, and I will admit they could have had more. I mean, maybe they could. If maybe like any of you watching think that they could have had that the game could have maybe had more moments like this, but I think what I'm satisfied with what we got in the sense that it didn't end up like a total sequence break like again most of Breath of the Wild did, but regardless, yeah.
Ron, how dare you? How dare you like Ocarina of Time a lot? How dare you love that game and talk down Breath of the Wild? You know that game is perfect, right?
Game of the year, man. Game it's it's a Zelda game. Everyone, it's a Zelda game, and remember, Breath of the Wild is perfect because it is Elder. Because actually, no, that's the great thing about it. It's not a Zelda game. Every Zelda game before it just was really really stale. So Breath of the Wild, by not being a Zelda game, succeeded far beyond our. Well, okay, I mean it's not a total departure from the series. There's
Yeah,
still some resemblance,
yeah, you could still see the
but for
connections.
the you can still see that. I don't want to say it's like a total departure. There's plenty of people think it's closer to Zelda 1 than anything, but I think it's closer to like Link Between Worlds, which I don't know. Like with Zelda 1, I think apart from like some of the really cryptic moments, Zelda 1, I think if I remember correctly, did the game itself like label dungeons from like 1 to on a scale of like 1 to 9
Yeah, they had like an
difficulty? Did they
an
all
explicit tier list for them.
Yeah, I think I remember something. I haven't played Zelda 1 in years, so I wouldn't really remember, but
A couple of other
I
Zelda
think
games actually
that
did that as well.
Link to the Past.
Link to the Past. I think that game. Yeah, well, Link to the Past explicitly did that. Then there was Link's Awakening that level one, and then the Oracle games did the same thing. So they did that for a while. They just like explicitly tiered them because well, Zelda could.
Yeah, Zelda 1 they I think tiering them was enough to provide a good enough sense of direction. The only problem is that relied too much on the gimmick of sharing secrets with your friends, and nobody's going to play the game like that
Yeah,
now.
I remember I actually talked about you and some other guys on another server about that, about how, or actually your server that you had that
Yeah, my
we always fool around in, but yeah, we were talking about
yeah,
how Zelda when I'm
my
like for like its time, the whole thing about sharing secrets and like the way it was set up back in '86, like that worked perfectly fine then, but the problem is that like that kind of
no
doesn't
one's
work.
going nobody's going to go into the game with that context.
Yeah,
Everyone the kind of context I and everyone else went into the game with was sort of a this is just this first Zelda game. That's about it.
normally with games like that, I try to play it fair and say like I try not to never hold dating mechanics against the game because it tried, and for its time, I mean, like, can you really hold so much against it? But in the case of Zelda One, it gave itself a limited gimmick that could only work for so long. So I mean, like in that case,
Yeah, it's
I
sold
kind
its
of
own.
won't give Zelda One slack for that because I think that was a bad move on the game's part,
Yeah,
and I'm glad they moved
yeah,
away from that.
that's the problem. Selling your game on something that just kind of seems cool at the time is not gonna work later on.
Yeah, that's just kind of thing.
Yeah.
It kind of shot itself in the foot decades later. People get mad. You're like, well, you shouldn't look it up online. Where to find things online? Because you're supposed to find everything yourself. I'm like, yeah, but I don't know. Burning a bunch of identical looking bushes and bombing identical looking walls is like the most mind numbing thing I have ever done. Like, no, I'm not doing that. Don't tell me how to play my Zelda. Thank you very much.
Right.
Anyway, you have anything still to say about your favorite Zelda title and all that? Because I know we branched off a little bit,
And
but
I'm sorry.
no,
I
no, no,
mean,
you're fine. You're fine. You're
I
fine.
think with I also think with like I also think the story progression was handled pretty well. I mean, specifically how they built up like the sort of rivalry between Link and Ganondorf. Like even in the beginning, they established it by having him kill the Deku Tree, the closest thing Link had to a father figure growing up.
Yeah.
And like when you say again, like think I said this before on the podcast, but when you saved him, they they made you
Hey, you cut out again. We lost the ed. They made you.
what?
You cut out after you said they made you. I'm sorry. Yeah, just cut
Yeah,
out.
they made you play out not only did they make you play out the part where you save the Deku tree, but they integrated it into the first dungeon, and I always thought that was pretty brilliant on the game. And like looking back at Link to the Past, what I know we're talking about 3D Zelda, but I remember with Link to the Past they tried to do the sort of Link a family member of Link's gets killed with like Link's uncle, but I mean like in the end there was like no real effect on Link's uncle dying in Link to the Past
It
as
was
he just kind of
it was very
it
impulsive of the
was
story.
it
It
was
just
pretty
happened.
impulsive and it just kind of happened and then afterwards they kind of
I hate to be a
and
pain, but you cut out
Ocarina
again
is
after you said they kinda.
sorry they kind of just bottlenecked right into a dungeon crawler after that. Whereas Ocarina integrated the first dungeon into saving the Deku Tree.
Yeah.
Not only that, but you could argue with the Deku Tree, him dying actually did leave an effect on the world. He was not there to protect Kakuri Forest anymore. And as a result, 7 years later, it was inhabited by monsters, and the Kakuri had to. Most of them, from what I remember, had to like retreat. Like you would find Mido in the Lost Woods and whatnot, and Soria's not there anymore. It was all just the monsters.
Yeah, you
Remember?
saw the consequences of like his death and like how it affected Kakiri
Yeah,
Forest, 7 years later, and that is
yeah.
pretty
It was a
cool. Like it was
perfect.
like I mean for
Yeah,
1988, like it was like a conscious, like Ocarina of Time's world for 1988 was like conscious, and I mean you didn't really see that too much, back then. So I
I
mean that is
mean,
pretty neat.
in Majora's case, I will admit Majora had more moments like this, and there are some parts where I will admit Ocarina could have done things better, like when you after like how Zora's domain is frozen over thanks to Ganondorf. I would have maybe liked if the game made you nab the fire arrows and use them to unfreeze Zora's domain, like making that the purpose of you doing the water temple in the first
Right,
place.
instead of just going, oh well, I guess this place is done for, and then just moving on from there. So
Yeah, I mean, it does get we do see it unfrozen in the end credits of the game, but that's still something they should have made you play out.
yeah, I mean
Um,
like it's just kind of like, oh well, yay, I guess. It's like, but at that point, like you're looking
Gerudo,
at the credits, so
Gerudo Valley. I mean, I don't think that changed too much apart from the Buru getting kidnapped and made it and enslaved by Kome and Katake, but like that's still a pretty minor change.
the only
The
thing I saw from like the after. No wait, no hold on. No wait, no never mind. I was just gonna say something, but I forgot that what I was gonna say would apply to the adult timeline, but don't worry about it. I'm sorry, Ron.
city. Except, Rob, you there?
Yeah, you cut out for a little bit. I feel
Sorry.
like.
Well, with Goron City, like not all the Gorons were gone in the adult world, but I remember like because I mean there was still that rolling one, but apart from him, everyone else was taken to the fire temple,
Yeah,
and
they
you
were all
needed to
imprisoned.
save. Yeah, and you needed to save all of them. Let's see. With the Shadow Temple, I mean, yeah, it was shrouded. Yeah, Kakariko Village was shrouded in darkness thanks to Bongo Bongo coming back from the dead, and yeah, but even that, like, you have to beat the first three dungeons for to like trigger that,
Right.
and as a result, it's not as strong since before then, even under Ganondorf's role, Kakariko Village still seems as calm and cozy as ever.
Yeah, they seem pretty chill
So
for having what's essentially like a little mini god just chilling out in their well, ruining every like that just seems weird. Little not really little like a big headless dude just in your village. He pretty much cursed the place, but hey, it's all right because it's all right.
no,
So
I mean, no, I mean he didn't curse the place until after you beat the first three adult dungeons. You have to beat those in order to trigger him
all right, because it
cursing
starts
the
burning and every. Yeah, I
village.
see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, before then, everything seemed really, really chill and all.
Actually, I think about what exactly was so cursed about Kakariko outside of like those buildings burning, and all that. When Bongo Bongo breaks out and escapes into the Shadow Temple. But I know it's
Yeah, yeah. You know what? Actually, you might have a point there. I mean, apart from it being lit darker and and whatnot,
in the
it
cloudy sky. But I mean, like,
the cloudy sky
oh
and
no, you
burning
blacked out the
buildings,
sun.
like, yeah, there isn't too much going for that, but yeah, I will admit, from a world building standpoint, yeah, Majora may have been better, but Majora's main focus was world building. So
That is true. I mean, I do
yeah,
get why people, favor or excuse me, or why Breath of the Wild? Why they favor Majora's Mask over Ocarina of Time. I don't know why I couldn't say Majora's Mask, but I can see why the people favored over that. Because I thought that when they took the general idea of Ocarina of Time and kind of applied it as one of the main forces behind Majora's Mask. I thought it worked out very well for it.
there were a lot.
I think it's a very worthy sequel to Ocarina of Time,
I
despite having a
think
different focus.
there were a lot of. I don't know. I think there were a lot of things people praised Ocarina for, with world building being one, and I guess with like Majora, they decided to make that the main focus, and then when it came to Wind Waker, and then okay, I don't think Wind Waker is too good of an example, but maybe like with Skyward Sword, they decided to take combat and improve upon that since that's one of the things people praised Ocarina. That's another thing people praised Ocarina for, the combat. And I think like let's see,
You know what, Ron? I really hate to do this, but we're getting close to 30 minutes and we're still in the first question. Might just want
I'm sorry.
to ease it along. We got quite a few to go through at that. I mean, I really really hate to do this, but I think we gotta just need to keep going. I'll just name my favorite one and we'll move on to the next question because I don't want this going on for like a
You were
super
breaking.
super long
You
time.
were you were you were breaking. I'm sorry.
Oh,
You were
it's
kind
fine.
of breaking there.
I was just saying that I don't mind podcasts or branching out a bit with questions, but I think we're just going a little too far if that makes sense. Because I think the podcast
Yeah,
is going to end up being
you're
longer than what it should be.
you're all fine, good.
All right, cool. So taking it around to me. So my favorite 3D Zelda title would probably have to be Skyward Sword. I'd rather say I know that's a pretty unpopular opinion. People aren't exactly too fond of that. too fond of that 3D Zelda game. Most people argue that it's the motion controls. Honestly, I can't
I
really
can
relate
see
to
it.
the. I'm sorry.
I can see it. Like I don't enjoy it as much as like Ocarina of Majora, but I see it. It's like I see that I could see that being a favorite. So,
I'm sorry, you crackled out a little bit, but you were saying like you could see the appeal of Skyward Sword. That's what I'm
yeah, I
getting,
could
right?
see it. I can see it being someone's favorite. Like I think it's, although it is the one that I remember the least.
I mean, hey, it happens, you know. I mean, I remember
Yeah.
really liking A Link to the Past, and I can hardly remember anything from that game. So you know, but
Uh,
yeah. So for Skyward Sword, like I was saying, like the motion controls. I know a lot of people point to that, like the first thing, like that ruins the game. I'm sorry, can't relate. Like I have never had a problem with the motion controls, like at all. Like I'm just like, okay, I got my right arm. Okay, is it working? Check. All right, got a Wiimote. All right, swing it
I don't
left,
know.
swing it right, swing it up, swing it down. All right, we're good to go. I seriously just don't see what the problem is. Like it works. I'm like,
Dep-
and you know,
it
like
depends on it depends on how well you set up your it depends on how well you set up your the Wii's antenna. Like
well,
from
then
time to
my
time
thing
I
is
have
like, well, that's your problem, not the game's. Then, like,
I don't know. I
I'm
think it
horrible setting up a
requires like
sensor
a
bar, and like I've
it,
always
it
run into problems.
requires it requires like really precise setup. Like half the time whenever I play the Metroid Prime trilogy, I have that problem where I have the sensor bar set up not the best, but like I'm willing to admit that's my fault.
Yeah,
You
and I mean
know.
that's the thing. I mean, like, and honestly, I'm not really that good at setting up the sensor bar myself. But I'm like, that's my problem, not the games. Like, I mean, would I rather have a Zelda game, traditional, hitting the B button to swing? I mean, yeah, I would prefer that any day because it's more standard. It's classic controls. I'm like, why wouldn't I want that? But like for what Skyward Sword did, like I don't hold that against the game. I'm like that's not my problem. And granted, I will say the motion controls in game do get a little finicky sometimes and are a little too tight in certain places that I don't really care for. But I'm like, I mean that's a little bit of a problem. But like it's like, but like 95% of the time, I'm not really having an issue with it. I'm like it's pretty precise, maybe a bit delayed, but precise. And I mean, like, I can't really complain about that,
Yeah.
but it isn't just the most. But yeah, I do like the motion controls. I do like the dungeons a lot. Although I don't kind of care they have you go back to the what is it the Seal Grounds Temple or whatever that's. No, the first what is it the Skyview Temple? Yeah, the first one, the Skyview Temple. Didn't kind of
Yeah.
care how they had you come back to that later just to get some water for the that I don't know what the heck that dragon lady's name is, but like I didn't really care for that. But yeah, I thought the dungeons were very interesting, and they tend to be pretty big. And I always do like myself a big dungeon that like not like Twilight Princess where it's almost like a bit of fluff in between it, so you kind of don't care sometimes. But I mean like it was like big enough to where like I felt like it was big and it had like every nook and cranny covered, and I'm like that's okay. I mean, and even if they were pretty linear. I'm like, I don't know. I still really like it. I'm like, if a linear dungeon is still a really good dungeon, then that's it. That's what it is to me. Just a really good dungeon, and I can't complain about that. I also like Skyward Sword is a little bigger about using its items. As you progress through the game, items in the overworld, the rather linear overworld, but I still like how it still was a bit more involved with it. Not that other 3D Zelda games weren't good with it because they were pretty good with it as well, but I like how Skyward Sword handled it. Also, the story. I very much enjoyed that one. I like how expressive Link is in that one. I like how they introduced a new villain that was very, very relevant to Zelda, unlike Vaati, where for the most part Vaati kind of exists sort of because he can. I mean, I still like Vaati, but I mean then again, I guess you could say the same for the Oracle games and the Oracle games villains, and I adore the Oracle games, so you know. But yeah, I like the Zelda in that one too. I liked how they built up. I especially liked the reveal of what or who she really was. I thought that was pretty climactic. Like it had this huge build. Like okay, like why does she keep going here? Why does she go there? And you started like trying to like see a connection between the places she's going to, and then you're like, oh, okay, that's what you were doing. I'm like, yeah, I kind of like how they built up to that. Skyward Sword, I'm like was. Now I will say the beginning of Skyward Sword's story was a bit too. It was the game. Skyward Sword was a little too aggressive with the story in the beginning because at the beginning of Skyward Sword, it's just a long drought of like no action and no adventure. It's just like,
Yeah, I think.
and that apart,
Yeah, I
like
think I
even
remember. I remember the beginning kind of turning me off from it a bit, but I remember beyond the beginning, not having too many complaints.
Yeah, that's about how I
Mhm.
am with it too. I'm like, the beginning is long, and honestly, even with it being my favorite 3D Zelda game, I don't care for the beginning of Skyward Sword. I mean, I do like what it has, but I think it goes it goes way too hard with this story, and it just shoves it right in your face for like a solid like 3 hours. I mean, I could actually understand why some people really hate that, because I mean, it's a Zelda game that starts off unusually slow. So I totally get that. It's one of those things too. Like I get why some people don't like Skyward Sword, because I mean it does have some legitimate issues that don't work. Like I mean, like I do get that exploration is definitely not at its best in Skyward Sword. I mean, I do like how they work with grinding and the upgrade system. I love the upgrade system, and I like how they try to make a bit of substitutes for the lack of exploration. But I mean, come on now, they could have done more with that. And I mean, yeah, I mean, there's also the goddess cubes where I do like finding those as well. But I mean, yeah, I mean, exploration for me isn't exactly mandatory to make a Zelda game really good to me. Because I mean, if it's just a really good adventure Zelda game but is linear, hey, I don't give a crap that it's linear. Like if it's a dang good adventure game, then it's a dang good adventure game. I'm not gonna complain. That's how I am anyway. And I thought that despite Skyward Sword's faulting, because I mean Skyward Sword does do some stupid stuff, and we will be talking about that in a future YouTube video. Despite that, what it excels in, I think it does very well.
Yeah. Yeah, that much I do remember about it. Anyway, next question.
Yep, let's go to the next question here for tonight, and that is: do you feel Ocarina of Time took the series to new heights, or do you feel that it held it back?
Well, my answer to that. I I think it did. Well, actually, to be honest with you, with New Heights, I think a lot of, I mean, 3D. Yeah, it took it to new heights with 3D. But as for the game, like sort of the on a mechanical standpoint, like it didn't change the dungeon layouts like the fans seem to think it did. That was
Yeah, it's
Link's
not that
Awakening.
drastic.
It's Link's Awakening was the game that changed the how what we've come to expect from dungeons.
Yeah, Ocarina of Time did not solidify. Yeah, I know what you're saying, because some people like to say that like Ocarina of Time solidified the dungeon formula. And even people who hate Ocarina of Time talk about how Ocarina of Time's like changes like the dungeon formula ruined the series. I'm sorry, it didn't start with Ocarina of Time.
It
That's a weird thing.
started
Like a
with
lot of like solidified elements that we see in Zelda actually started with A Link to the Past, not Ocarina of Time. I don't know why people love to
or
point
like
to Ocarina of Time.
even even Link's. I think Link's Awakening started a lot of it too,
Yeah, that
with
is true.
dungeon layouts being the big thing, like boss keys, items. I like items drastically opening up dungeons because if you remember Link to the, so I think with Link to the Past, I never, there was no port dungeon in Link to the Past where like when I, okay, maybe there were a few, but for the most part, there was no dungeon where I felt like when I got the item, it like completely like changed how I explored the dungeon. There was barely,
Yeah,
like, I think there was like a lot of it felt like you were getting the item too late in the dungeon, and it sort of just felt like a key. Like whatever, but however, like the Titan's mitt was exactly that. It got you through a few moments in the dungeon, but it was not used for the boss or that many puzzles designed around it. But they did make up for it when it came to use in the overworld. Because I think that was, I remember that being the big thing Link to the Past had going for it. Its use of items in the overworld, not necessarily the dungeons.
yeah. Actually, I noticed it's a common theme that yeah, not that 3D games don't do it, but I know like especially 2D titles tend to really like to use their items in the overworld. That's something that from Link to the Past that you can see. I do believe in Link's Awakening. I have not beaten Link's Awakening. I know, right? It's a crime, but I have not beaten that. But I definitely see it in games like the Minish Cap, the Oracle games, even the DS Zelda games, and well, undoubtedly, Link Between Worlds. But That's a theme that you could see carried on into
I
other 2D Zelda
actually,
games.
I actually started Link's Awakening pretty recently, and so far I'm liking the dungeons a lot. They're basically everything I liked about Ocarina's dungeons. Everything I liked about the dungeons in Ocarina and Majora, but like this time, like there's that extra bit of freedom to use keys and to choose which door you want to use the key you just got in, which goes a long way. I like that. Anyway, but again, I haven't beaten Link's Awakening yet, so I
Okay,
can't
and
exactly. What?
no, no, keep going. I was just I thought you were gonna. I
Yeah, I
thought you were
haven't.
finished, but I just kind of
Yeah, I
stopped.
have yet. I've yet, and of course, like yeah, the it's like any other 2D Zelda game. Like the dungeon items keep getting used and used in the overworld, and it works. And yeah, as for yeah, Ocarina, did it take it to new heights? I mean, I think it just kind of took a lot of things that were already established in like Links to the Past and Link's Awakening, put them in like 3D and added a new spin on it, which which stuck with me pretty well.
Okay, so if you're all good there, I'll take the torch from you and I'll share my part.
I mean, could have maybe elaborated on what Ocarina did differently from those games, but yeah,
I mean, if you want to say it's
I,
basically a Link to the Past but better, I mean, that works too. There are no like. I mean, if your answer is simple to a question, that's fine. Again, this is
like
very informal. You don't have to like follow it, like by the book. We're a very not by the book kind of people around here.
I mean, I still kind of feel like
If you got anything you
maybe
want to say, go right ahead.
I think when it came I think with Ocarina when it came to like I don't if if any of you have beaten Link's Awakening, any of you watching have beaten Link's Awakening, can you do any dungeon in Link's Awakening out of order? I'm not sure. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, but
Yeah,
like
someone out there, come on, hit us
with
up on
Link
YouTube.
to with with like Link to the Past, like there were some Dark World dungeons you could. There was it started with it was still the idea of Zelda One, where you could do certain dungeons out of order, but they were all tiered. But I think in Ocarina of Time, they were probably tiered better in that they gave you a little bit more of an idea of how hard they were,
Right,
and
like you
they
said, the Shadow Temple being one of the later ones that open up. So it's
yeah, I think yeah, I mean I think and I also do think some of the dungeons were hard for different reasons. Like for instance, the water temple, like comparing the water temple and shadow temple, like it was definitely the most labyrinthian temple in the game, but in terms of enemies, it didn't have too much new to
yeah,
offer apart from like maybe Dark Link, but still. And then there was the Shadow Temple, which did the opposite. It was pretty much a straight shot, but there were a lot of enemies along with it to make up for that.
right. Just keep it
It
interesting.
was, yeah, and then Forest Fire and Spirit. Well, the Spirit Temple, I think it was just like so. I guess you could say it was just like sort of one last test in terms of like puzzles. I say that loosely because like with the Mirror Shield, you get that a little too late, and the Silver Gauntlets don't get much use either. But I still think like the puzzles they introduced, they were interesting and they were sort of challenging. If the problem is that like a lot of them could be exploited, but you'd have to be like an Ocarina of Time expert to do that. It's not again not like
It's
that
not like,
other
oh hey,
game.
wait. It's not like yeah, that other. You're like, oh wait, I have this, and then it's just over. You know? Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's not like um that other game. But yeah, even with like the Forest Temple and Fire Temple, I think with the in the case of the Fire Temple, I think it was a little bit more labyrinthian than the Forest Temple, but there were less enemies in it. If I'm correct, does that statement hold truth to you?
I mean, I get that, and I guess is that time for me to finally get that torch, but So
Yeah,
I
I
mean, yeah,
think
I mean, I can say it's a fair trade. I mean, like, unlike when I've talked about Breath of the Wild and how much I didn't like those dungeons because or the Divine Beast dungeons because, well, I mean,
they're
yeah,
stagnant.
because
They're
they're
stagnant.
just kind of like, all right, go to 5 places in the Divine Beast, and then go to one more area in the Divine Beast, and then you fight the boss, and then you leave. I'm like, that is just such an uninteresting concept to me. Like I could have done. I mean, yeah, you got the gimmick, like, oh look, Ruta can drop water on herself, and then you got you know what the heck, Rudanya, which can climb around in Death Mountain. But I'm like,
There was no point. There was like no point where it really like realized where they really realized its full
yeah,
potential
it
with the
was just
gimmick.
a gimmick, and it just really just tries to cover up just how awful they are. And I'm like, no, you're not slick Breath of the Wild. Like I've played more than one Zelda game. All right, like I know I know
Yeah,
Nintendo could do better than that. Heck, the DLC they dropped for
yeah.
Breath of the Wild show that they can do better than that.
I didn't play that yet.
And the dungeon is very good. You should definitely try that one if you can. But get back to Ocarina of
Um,
Time. Do I think that it took the series to new heights? Yes and no. And I say yes because I mean, like, it took everything about like A Link to the Past and Link's Awakening, and it made it better.
it's
But at this,
3D.
yeah, it's in
It's 3D.
3D, and then
It's
had its own
so
spin on it that was pretty interesting. But at the same time, it just took things from A Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, and just made them better. So I'm like, it's like, yeah, it took it somewhere, but like at the same time, I feel it kind of didn't, because it just kind of took something and just put its own spin on it, and I do like how it was done in Ocarina of Time a lot more. But especially from a gameplay standpoint, I
yeah.
can't say much from the story
It was
standpoint
not. It
because I
was
haven't
not
played too much
nearly.
of Link's Awakening. I don't know how good its story is because people praise that game's story like it's like the best thing ever. But I wouldn't know. I'm sorry. What were you gonna say, Ron?
Actually, well, for one, with Link, well, I think, yeah, for one, I mean, it, despite being 3D, it wasn't that as far of a departure as like Mario 64 or Sonic Adventure.
Right.
And yeah, with Link's Awakening, I don't, I'm not too familiar with the story, but I do think the main writer of Majora also had a hand in Link's Awakening. So I think that's a good sign.
Oh, okay. That would make sense actually, considering how story focused Link's Awakening is. But again, I'd have to actually go and play a lot more than the first dungeon of Link's Awakening, so I could actually hold some credibility to
I think
what I
I'm
would
I
say.
think I'm on I think I'm like just getting done with the third dungeon
Okay. Let me know how it is,
in
after the podcast, of course, But let me know how the game is.
so far at least.
Yeah, but I mean, guys, that's just my general point about it. I mean, Ron kind of explained pretty much everything I did really like about Ocarina of Time, but I mean, that's kind of thing. It's just A Link to the Past, but I thought it was just done better. And well, that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so moving on to the next question for tonight, the third one. Get this, and we're going on 45 minutes, but the third question for tonight, and that is, what are your opinions on Wind Waker's approach on an open world?
I didn't I didn't explore too much of Wind Waker's open too much of the world of Wind Waker beyond what I was supposed to do. I remember being really irritated with how bloated it was in the movements and sailing in general.
Really?
But that was just me. Didn't I mean, I just didn't feel up to really looking into Wind Waker's world. but I'm sure. But a lot of people liked it. A lot of people liked exploring the Great Sea and just how much there actually was to do in it. Is that what do you think of it?
Well, I mean, I thought I really liked. Well, at least more from the perspective of the HD remake because that's the one I'm the most. Well, actually, technically, I'm probably the most familiar with the original GameCube game because I remember playing the original GameCube Wind Waker like it was no tomorrow. Like I had played the crap out of that. Played the crap out of that game back when I first started. That and Ocarina of Time. I played both that and Ocarina of Time like to death. But now I'm pretty sure I would have to go back and play the original GameCube version of the Wind Waker. But I remember people complain about how annoying it was to get around in the world. You have to keep changing the wind direction and everything. And the Wind Waker HD, they fixed that with the fast sail because it could change wind passively and they could just do it on the go. So I'm like,
Yeah,
in the Wind Waker HD, I find it very tolerable, and especially as I make my way through the Wind Waker HD and I'm playing it, and like all right, go here, like they want you to go to this dungeon, but I'm like, I think I'm gonna break off for a little bit, go explore, go to a couple of islands, see what I can do, see what I can do, how far I can get into it, just explore some stuff, maybe go into some caves or something like that, just branch off, and like. The thing I like about the Wind Waker is that it just feels really chill for a Zelda game. It's like, you can do that, or you can go check out some islands or something like that. I'm like, all right, yeah, sure, I'll go check out some islands. Now, I will say
that's.
that... I'm sorry?
I was just saying. Now we're on to the whole chill feeling of Wind Waker. Yeah, I think presentation wise, it was definitely one of my among my favorites. But yeah, go on.
Okay. So, yeah, I did like how, Wind Waker was definitely one of the 3D Zelda games that was really, really, really good about making use of its items in the overworld. From island to island, like that. Like, the bow and arrow have so much use in that game, and I love that. I mean, granted, the bow and arrows tend to be pretty good about having use in the overworld, but I mean, the Wind Waker especially, it becomes pretty dang useful. And I really do like that. Same with the boomerang. The boomerang, even after the even after the bow and arrows become a thing, and like it kind of takes its place in terms of combat. But when you're fighting the big Octo, the boomerang still becomes very useful in that situation. So I'm like, that's pretty cool. And then the Karak Leaf, and then there's islands where like that one island. I want to say it's the Crescent Moon Island or something like that. Where you have to like blow those little big Deku seeds or whatever the heck those things were into like the little little holes, and you can make your way up to the island. I'm like, I just thought the Wind Waker was really good about like making use of its items. You go into a dungeon, you get an item, and like it's not to say that like other Zelda games actually I'll go on about a little bit about the whole item thing about Zelda later, but just just the way the Wind Waker handles items is just like you go there, you use the items here, and you go from there, and like it's like this item. Basically, I just like how the Wind Waker's like, this item works in like a lot of places, and I just thought that was very interesting. I'm sorry, did you say something? I just kind of got thrown off by that for a second.
Sorry, it was brick. You know what? I'm not gonna lie. After what you've been saying, maybe one day I'll actually make a point to try exploring the Great Sea a little more beyond the main story.
If you're playing the
I'm
HD
sure I
remake,
might
I would definitely recommend it. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, that's actually what I have.
Oh yeah, shoot, yeah, definitely do that. Oh, Varen, what are we talking about today? Oh, we're talking about 3D Zelda games.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, you're almost at 50 minutes late to it, but oh, welcome. So that's my thoughts. My 2 cents on the Wind Waker's approach to an open world. I thought it was very interesting. I like how broad it was, and it was broad on a scale, not with like how we mentioned with Breath of the Wild. How I felt like Breath of the Wild kind of some scenarios were a little broken with it, and how it was just like it's not like like in the Wind Waker was like you could do this, and like especially like if you have to shoot something on a boat and like it's too far to lock onto with your bow and arrows, and shooting something on the boat actually takes some skill. Because the waves are always like messing with the deviation and all that. But yeah, so that's my 2 cents on the Wind Waker's approach to open world. Let's try to speed things along a little bit faster here. We're getting pretty close to 50 minutes here. Next question. The series past, as of late especially, has been tagged with criticism stating that items act as no more than glorified keys. 3D titles in particular tend to get the most flack for this. What do you think? Or excuse me, do you think this is true?
Apart from Twilight Princess, I disagree.
Excuse me, I gotta drink some water. My throat is getting pretty dry. You know, it's winter time, and
Yeah.
normally I hate to drink on a podcast, but it's getting. I haven't done a podcast in the like this deep in the winter, and I was getting kind of dry. So sorry about that.
I got you. Anyway.
So you were talking about
Anyway.
Twilight Princess and items.
Yeah, I think with the exception of that game, yeah, that items the items in 3D games all got ample use and throughout the course of the games. You know?
No, were you expecting like feedback from me? I was just like carefully listening. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. It's kind of bad now, but yeah. Yeah, I think man, Twilight Princess did sort of start the whole trend of no of like items are useless, and I actually do think that was when people were starting to complain about that with 3D Zelda game, because before I don't remember too many issues there, you know.
Yeah, and especially when you're done, I'll definitely get my 2 cents on this. Cause I've got some stuff I want to lay down about this right now.
But yeah, I do think if what you were saying was anything to go about Wind Waker was anything to go by, yeah, I do think I think that might be an example of how much use items get, especially the bow. Let's see what else. Majora, well, to be fair, yeah, the fire, ice, and light arrows aren't used that much, but the masks.
You're a little tired there.
Sure. Yeah, the masks made up for it. Says
More than made up for it. Like the mask. I mean, like they clearly took that. They took that and they took off. They took off with it, and I thought it was executed very well.
oh yeah, that the masks. The mask concept was handled pretty brilliantly.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
definitely a
apart
good.
from
That's definitely a good rebuttal against this theory that items are like very one dimensional and serving one purpose.
yeah, um, I think in Ocarina, yeah, I think they all got ample use as well. Apart from maybe the mirror shield, but yeah, the mirror shield
And I mean,
was
not
like
not every not
okay,
everybody can be winners. It's not like I'm not expecting every single like okay, if this item is not usable in every single freaking scenario, if this Zelda game sucks. No, that's that's not how I how I value a Zelda game. But I'm like, if there's a couple of exceptions that
yeah.
are just one time things. I mean, I don't really care for it when a Zelda game does that. But I'm like, I'm not gonna get like ultra mad about that or anything.
Yeah, I do think yeah, I do think the mirror shield was the only item that I actually felt like was kind of underplayed beyond like the spirit temple and Ganon's castle. Even in the spirit temple, there's not enough mirror shield puzzles. It's
Yeah, it's
only
got late
used.
game syndrome. you know.
It's not even just that. You get the items so late in the dungeon as well.
Yeah, it's pretty much just a tool for a boss fight. That's pretty much it. And a couple
Yeah.
and like one or two puzzles, but like it's pretty much just a tool for a boss fight. Not that I did like that boss fight though with the mirror shit. I thought that was really cool. But
Yeah. I mean, best boss in the series, I don't think so, but I do think it's a good boss fight
I wouldn't say it's the
nonetheless.
best boss fight. Galactos from Skyward Sword is the best boss fight in any Zelda game. Let's be honest here.
Galactus was pretty cool. A personal favorite of mine is Majora without the Fierce Deity because that was because of the challenge, but Galactus that was a set that was more of like a satisfying boss, like a feel good kind of boss.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorta.
Galactos was fairly difficult too. A bit tricky with how they he was a little good at baiting you a bit because you weren't quite sure he was gonna strike. Although he did make a sound effect that telegraphed it a little bit. And you had the little like, well, I don't know what the heck you call those little like blade boomerangs that I don't know. They always threw me off a bit when they kind of came flying at you. But yeah, it probably wasn't hard as Majora, of course. But yeah, on a satisfactory level, I mean, that boss is so satisfying to kill. I mean, just like
Yeah.
rip off his arm parts and then grab his sword and then just like basically just tear the dude up like so bad.
Okay. Anyway, what about like Skyward Sword's item usage? I don't really. Again, I'm not too well versed with that game, but what's your thoughts on how
Uh,
items were used in that game?
I thought Skyward Sword was I'm not quite. I wouldn't say it's the best it's been with Zelda in items, but I thought it was a step up from Twilight Princess, where the items tend to just kind of lose purpose after the dungeon you finished it in. Outside of course a few
I
moments,
think
in the overworld, of course, but like
Twilight Princess. I think that was sort of the dungeon items. They were just sort of the dungeon's gimmicks, which is why people love Twilight Princess's dungeons. But it's also why people don't like them.
yeah, and I don't know, I don't know. I have to go back and I don't know. That was a horrible stutter, but I'd have to go back and play a more Twilight Princess because I haven't beaten that game since like 2013. So I don't want to act like I just know that game from top to bottom. I remember playing that game a lot back then, but that was back then.
2013.
That's like the last time I've beaten it. I got the
I think that
HD
was
one.
like
I've got the HD remake, but I just haven't beaten it yet.
I did hero mode on that.
I'm actually that's what I'm thinking of doing. Just doing a hero mode run of it. Maybe even with the Ganondorf amiibo. So making it a really brutal
It's
hero
not.
fight.
It's not that hard.
Yeah, it's just punishing for really punishing over mistakes. I mean, I might try that though. But getting back on the topic of items and everything. So for like Skyward Sword, I would say like for the beetle. I mean, the beetle gets a
You
decent amount of
broke.
attention. Not that the beetle is. I mean, the beetle is
Rob,
basically.
you broke.
Oh
You cut
no!
out.
Oh no! But I was just saying in regards to Skyward Sword. You got that right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was saying in
And
regards to
Sky.
Skyward Sword, like when it comes to things like the beetle, I mean the beetle actually got a decent amount of attention, especially if you're shooting for 100%ing, or just looking for everything you can in a dungeon, like rupees or finding like a. I know like Skyward Sword hit I
Couldn't
think a couple of heart pieces in
couldn't you
dungeons.
also couldn't you couldn't you also steal enemies' items or disarm them with the beetle?
I think that was with the whip.
Um,
I know the whip you can steal stuff. I know from like
yeah,
the Bacabas and
one
the
of them.
horns. And I want to say something else, but
Yeah.
I would have to like go out and try it again. But yeah, and I think the bow becomes pretty combat focused after its main dungeon in Skyward Sword, which I didn't really care they did that too much. The whip also, I mean, you can kind of see like explicitly like for the first half of Skyward Sword they're pretty good. Like for the first half, like for I wouldn't even say the first half. There's just certain parts of Skyward Sword where they're better about items than others. Like excuse me, like the slingshot or the scatter shot if you upgrade it, it kind of loses a little bit of purpose after you get the beetle. A
Wasn't
little bit.
Skyward Sword weren't Skyward Sword's enemies also kind of flexible? Like
Yeah,
I'm not sure it applies to every enemy, but like the Deku Baba could be beaten by throwing a bomb in his mouth. Is that
yeah. I know.
correct?
I think. Yeah, I think they did actually try to eat the bombs. I mean,
Yeah,
I've been playing through
didn't.
Skyward
What
Sword
about
more
this?
recently, but I would have to go out and actually try that. I'm not a.
What about
What's up?
what about the Skulltulas? Was there like another way to beat them? I feel like there was, but I can't remember.
I can't. I don't. As far as I'm concerned, there wasn't really too many two ways. I know like you could kill them in two ways. You could either kill them, and this wasn't even really with items, but like I know you could kill them with, you could stab them while they were on their webbing, or you could tip them and then jump and stab them. If you felt like it. It's just like one way or the other. But there was also
Yeah.
I know that the little dragon scale thing that allows you to swim around the water that got a decent amount of attention in Skyward Sword, and I did like that, except for the old little tadpole water note things. That was kind of terrible. That was a pretty terrible moment in that game. I'm not even gonna lie, I really didn't care for that. But I do
Yeah.
feel that and I do like the fire earrings in the game because not only does it allow you to tolerate the really hot sections of Elden Volcano, but also it can put out the fire if you're burning for whatever reason in
I got.
combat, and I thought that was pretty cool. And then they actually give the claw shot the claw shot's a decent amount of attention as well as you make your way through the game. So I mean, like Skyward Sword, I thought was, I don't know if I would say it was one of the best when it came to a Zelda game that handled items, but I thought it was a step up from Twilight Princess in terms of like, here it is, here there's an item. Okay, now we don't care about it anymore. Like I really can't remember using the Gale Boomerang. Maybe with the exception, I want to say Hyrule Castle. Again, yeah, I think used the Gale Boomerang in Hyrule Castle, but I can't really remember using it like anywhere else. Anywhere it was like mandatory or something like where it was required. And it felt like it was
What about
more than
what about like
had more than one dimension. Excuse me.
and with Breath, and then there's also the item thing with Breath of the Wild, like or lack thereof, because the only dungeon items, if you want to call them dungeons, there were like the first four shrines where they all introduced the Sheikah Slate
Yeah,
abilities.
those were pretty much as close as we got to classic dungeons.
Like, because that's another thing the divine beasts needed. They needed like an item to open them up. Like, technically, you would get abilities to for beating them, but Rivali's Gale is the only one that actually like really changed how you would go about exploring the world. The
Yeah,
rest
I
were
mean,
just kind of nice power ups.
Daruk's Protection is just free invincibility. Urbosa's
For
Fury is just a really, really, really wide range electric spin attack. And Mipha's Grace was just like hey, you're not dead. So,
it was a revival fairy basically.
yeah, it was just a fairy, like a glorified fairy. Yay, I got a glorified fairy. What
Yeah,
do you do? But yeah, Rivali's Gale
yeah,
was pretty much the only one to actually add like a layer to the exploration. And even then, there are no parts where it's like it's mandatory, which I felt kind of sucks. I'm like, I want to actually have like a lot of use to this. Not, hey, see that mountain? That like,
and like
I hate climbing in Breath of the Wild. Like, people tell me, don't you get satisfied when you climb a mountain? No, I hate climbing in that game. I mean, like I know my favorite Zelda game is Spirit Tracks, and they like, well, you like to ride the train in Spirit Tracks. I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm like, at least in Spirit Tracks, it has this more like consistent feel to it. Not
you're,
like I'm
you're
exploring and then like
Rob, you cut out
I'm cutting out
after
again.
you.
Shoot, man.
Yeah, after you said, I think like you were starting to cut out after you said that you hated climbing.
Oh, that. Yeah, I mean, I just like I don't know. I really don't care for the climbing. I mean, like, it just feels like for when it comes to exploring, it just feels like it's a bit out of nowhere, and it's just a random change of pace. I mean, I know there's spirit tracks, but at least with spirit tracks, you can there's always warp gates and convenient spots, and even then, I can look forward to a destination that's I look forward to like the mountain climbing. I hate it in Breath of the Wild, but if there was something that I actually looked forward to getting up to that, say an item or a side quest that was actually pretty freaking cool or something like that, I'm like, all right, well, you know what? I freaking hated climbing that mountain, but hey, I got here, so I guess I can't complain too much. But it's always like a Korok seed or something, and like occasionally like a
Yeah.
shrine, but it's usually like a
Let's see.
Korok seed. I'm like, yeah, that was worth it.
But yeah, I think that was another thing aspects where Breath of the Wild felt kind of empty, and it's sort of dungeonized. And like, I think I've heard a few people say that this was a good thing about Breath of the Wild because it fixed that this apparent items are useless problem that every Zelda game before it had.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
it's
I know
like,
we're just talking about 3D Zelda, but if you want to talk about like the broad spectrum of Zelda games we have, no, like, like items are only useful in the dungeon and then never used again. Like, how many? Okay, I don't mean to be rude here, but how many Zelda games have you actually played? I mean, like, you can go back. You could go back to play the first Zelda game with items. They're used more than once in their dungeons. You know, I mean, granted, Zelda 1 had a bit of a less focus on its items and more focus on just simply exploration, but like even still, I'm like, I mean, like you look at Link to the Past, like items that use more than once in the dungeon. Ocarina of Time, it's used more than once, maybe with the exception,
in fact,
like the like the mirror shield,
I'd
like you
argue
mentioned.
I'd argue with Links to the Past. Even that game had like way more use for the items outside the dungeon than in the dungeon because it was like the Spirit Temple where you'd a lot of them felt like Spirit Temple where you get the dungeon items like way too late in the dungeon
Right,
to
and I
do
mean,
it,
even then, I
actually.
mean that's okay because I mean if it wants to make use outside of the dungeon, hey, knock yourself out. Like I'm totally with you on that. You know,
Yeah, like
I'm
the
with that philosophy. I'm
Titans.
like, hey, go right ahead. Doesn't have to be in the dungeon where the item is used. I'm like, as long as I can, go out there, as long as I went to, earn that item and I can use it and mess around with the overworld and open up more stuff, hey, I'm satisfied.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, all the shake a slide abilities they were pretty I will admit they were pretty useful in the overworld, but if the rest of the game did that, I would have probably liked it better.
Right, and just speaking on Breath of the Wild items, like see, now I know if you hit unique items that made it necessary to get around, or items that like just made it where it would open up other places. Again, if you just hit it in a traditional fashion, Breath of the Wild would be like a horrible game because like it would be a pain finding it. But I'm like they could have at least done something like maybe make some like towers or something like that, or you maybe like make like some tall like ancient Sheikah buildings or something like that that contain items that you need to get around. Like, but like it's something like like it's way off somewhere, but you know exactly where it's at, and you know where you want to get to. You wanna like oh you wanna sail the high seas or something like that. Well, you know what? Go up to that Sheikah building over there, and then have the thing out there that helps you sail across the water. I'm like, all right, shoot, yeah, I see you up there, So like if it did something like that, I thought it would have been like quite an interesting game. Where it's just like if you want to use the item, you want to see what it does, you want to get around places either easier if you want to get to something at all. Go there, they got you covered. I think that would have made it a lot more interesting. And I mean, granted, it runs into the whole thing where people say that, and I'm not saying there isn't any truth to that, that philosophy that Zelda items were just glorified keys, but I'm like, even still, I'm like, I mean, what sounds more fun to you? Zipping around, like a dungeon with the hook shot, or just opening up, using a key and open up the door? Like, just look at me in the face and say that. I know you can't do that, but just look at me in the metaphorical face and tell me that. Like, using the hook shot is just like using a key. Like, is that just equally as boring to you? Answer me that, Ron.
No, no.
Yeah, right. So I
Using the
mean, like,
hook shot's actually satisfying to you. It's
right. I mean, it's the same thing. Like using the boomerang to get around. I'm like, they could have just done it in the.
anyway.
I mean, would you rather just Ocarina of Time? Just like, are you telling me that in the case of Ocarina of Time, like taking away this? I mean, like, what? Even so, you can just hear me getting confused by that philosophy. Because I mean, it's kind of like I mean, it's not like Ocarina of Time. Like every single thing is locked off by. And like every once in a while, there is something that you can't access that because you don't have the right thing. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll come back later. And I do kind of wish that Ocarina of Time had something where you could like at least mark on your map or something like that. But it's a
Anywho,
1998 video game. What are you gonna do about it? But oh wait, you
anywho.
stated I gotta be mad at it anyway.
Um. Anyway, next question.
You want to move on to the next question? Yeah, we are.
Sure.
Yeah, we're getting close to an hour and 10 minutes here. Let's move on to the next question for tonight, and that is 3D Zelda games by far have the largest focus on storytelling. In a series that thrives on adventure, do you think that story has a place in Zelda? Or do you think Breath of the Wild made the right decision to greatly reduce the focus on that factor?
I think I think they needed to balance it. Like, I think the thing that made Zelda work, even if the stories were kind of cliche, like in Ocarina, what they did right was sort of they may not have been character driven, but they were plot driven. Like they were like you kind of grew through your experiences in the game, and it was sort of about developing Link through the gameplay. Link to the Past even handled this pretty well because that was just like straight adventure with straight like growth. There was like a and the even the difficulty kind of helped that. I may not care for Link to the Past difficulty, but I do think that was sort of a contributing factor of the sort of satisfaction of beating the game. I do think if the story and gameplay work together, then that's what matters. Because it's like you even said in your because like you said in your review of Breath of the Wild that its story was all bark and no bite, right? Like
Yeah, I did
Rob,
say that. Yep.
like I and yeah, that is kind of the that is sort of the problem. We if we're gonna but I think if there's going to be a greater focus on story, they should focus on making you play out as much of it as you can and not really like reduce it all to like unlockable cutscenes or
Right, that all focus on like the same two characters. Please. Can we move away from that, please? Because I mean, like, all right, is it my time to shine?
anyway, with
Oh, okay.
but I also do think in the case of Twilight Princess, I think my main problem with that game's plot is that like there was hardly a since the items became pretty useless, there hardly was a sense of growth. It felt like the development was all shifted away from Link and more toward Midna, especially by the second half.
Yeah, I can agree with you on that.
Like
Definitely.
I think the first half didn't it wasn't as prevalent. In fact, one of the moments where I think Twilight Princess came pretty close to capturing that ocarina magic was when 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 Colin got kidnapped by King Bulblin, however fucking pronounce him, but like um let's see like when like this time around, yeah, he was
And you cut out. You said he was, and then you cut out. Run, run,
means of defense
run,
to Colin.
run.
What?
After you said
What?
he was, you cut out.
He was yeah, he was he was terrorizing your friends again, but this time like when he did it the first time you had no means of defending yourself since you just gave your weapon to Colin. But this
Right.
time around not only do you have a sword and shield, but you also have Epona to catch up to him. And it was sort of a and it was a nice and like it actually this you grew even if you didn't grow some all that much since it was still the beginning of the game you still grew somewhat and it was still pretty satisfying in sort of a like it's sort of a it's kind of progressing from here but they never really like go beyond that because I mean like yeah you fight King Bulbin a couple times but after that like he's kind of tossed to the wayside in favor of Xant and then Ganondorf.
Yeah, the focus does kind of definitely move away from you know, like you were just kind of like Link and how he grows and such. It's more. It seems like and well, Breath of the Wild kind of took that to the extreme because Link is the most boring he's been since the OG Zelda. But but
In
yeah.
Breath
What's
of
up?
the Wild, Breath of the Wild was Breath of the Wild also had that other problem where you didn't where Link didn't need the growth because he didn't. He was you could basically take on you could basically if you were good at the game, you could like take on Calamity Ganon as you could take on Calamity Ganon like as early as you could according to how good you were at the game. It's not like you needed to it's not even like you needed to go through all the necessary growth steps. And that was a story problem as well.
Yeah, I think it was another thing too, and I
And
don't,
like
and it's not like one Zelda game has done this, but I kind of didn't care for how Breath of the Wild started the story with Link at his best, at his peak. It's not like other Zelda games where he starts off as a insignificant nobody and he makes his way up, and you see how he makes his way up to the
yeah.
top. He's like in Breath of the Wild, he is already there. He's at the climax of his his growth, and he's already there. And a couple of those Zelda games have done that. Well, by a couple, I really mean like
Oh yeah.
the first Zelda game kind of did that because he was kind of already his prime, and then Forces Adventures kind of did that as well. It
Back
was
to
just
oh yeah. Back to Twilight Princess. I mean, I also do think that yeah, making all the growth centered around Midna instead of Link. I do think that was sort of the other extreme because like um basically what Twilight Princess did was make you feel like the companion, like sort of the Navi. Whereas but I think and I also think like you're told that like if yeah, you're told to get all three pieces of Fuse Shadow, but you don't actually get to but this isn't some kind of power you get to use. It's a power that Midna uses.
sorry for cutscenes only, and it doesn't even involve you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like seriously, there's this one like seriously, there's like when Minna actually uses the Fuse Shadow, she turns into this huge beast. It's like, hello, I'm the one that collected these pieces. I'd actually like to use this kind
Right. Where's my arc?
of Shadow Ganondorf as like that giant Ganondorf and it's like, oh my god, why am I not using the thing I helped collect? Why am I not why don't we don't even get to fight this form of Ganondorf? You know? And like they don't even show the fight. Always they just cut to us showing Ganondorf with a broken fused shadow.
Oh yeah,
Like
BTW. Midna went to fight Ganon, and then it just kind of goes back to you. You're like,
it's
oh,
like
okay.
BTW Ganondorf killed no okay, he didn't kill Midna, he just made it impossible for her to be in the light world. Yeah, that was I mean, I will say, as for the writing of Twilight Princess itself, despite the focus being taken off of you, it's written pretty solidly up to the end.
Oh yeah.
My biggest gripe with the end was that they brought Zelda back to life, and I think it could have. First off, I think it could have worked great if Midna, maybe like if Zelda stayed dead and Midna took her place as the princess of Hyrule. Hence her goal from the beginning of the game and the title Twilight Princess.
That would have been
First,
quite a plot twist actually. Like, oh dang, she's oh
yeah,
that
like
would be pretty interesting.
she would work her way all the way up top. First off, second off, like let's see, in regards to that another thing when Zelda like I think that was like when Zelda died, we saw her body dissolve. Ganondorf managed to find her dead body.
Well, I actually something I noticed about Twilight Princess too. Twilight Princess is kind of like, that one kid you're playing an imaginary game with, like you're playing superheroes, right? And you're like, yeah, I punched off your arm. And then like, you can't punch off my arm. I had like freaking metal armor there, like that's how Twilight Princess is. Like, yeah, I can't. You know what? That can't happen because I say it can't happen. Like, shut up. Like, like
Yeah,
I really can't stand that kind of storytelling. It's the Twilight Princess is
yeah,
not the only Did I say Skyward
and
Sword by the way?
plus,
I didn't mean to say Skyward
and,
Sword if I said Skyward Sword, but
and plus, I mean, plus Zelda sacrificing herself in the first place was the plus. I mean, Zelda sacrificing herself that made her an impact character of Twilight.
you cut out after Twilight. Ron. Psst. Guys, looks like I'm all alone again. I'm scared. Ron. Ron.
You broke. I think one of us broke.
Yeah,
Did
you like
did all that?
disappeared for a second, and I was all alone in the
I'm
podcast.
sorry. As
No,
I
it's
was
fine.
saying, yeah, with Zelda, yeah, with I mean, why did they undo her sacrificing herself? That was her. That was she was an impact. That made her an impact character. That changed Midna's perspective on the Hylians as a whole, and made her care about the light world. You
Right.
know,
And rather than situation,
and
you know what, let's sacrifice myself, but oh wait, wait, I'm back. You know, like it's just kind of like that's like I kind of can't stand in like entertainment media in general, and a lot of writers like to do this where they just like, well, you know what, everybody said they're dead, but now they're back to life, and I'm like, I don't know,
yeah,
I don't like that kind of storytelling. I'm like, if a character's gonna die, unless you give me a really good reason as to why they shouldn't be dead or why they came back to life, unless you give me like a very legit reason that works within your world as to why they came back, like it's just like just let them die,
yeah.
please.
And plus, I do think it would have been more satisfying if Minna was the princess of Hyrule. I mean, she did kind of start off isolated as an imp, a mockery of herself,
Yeah.
and just usurped. And it was kind of about her rising from her rising from the tops, rising like all the way to the top in that regard.
And I will
And
say her payoff and her character growth was pretty satisfying by the end.
it it was, and I will admit, it was. I will admit the ending that they. I will give the ending that they did go with this. It was satisfying. It was kind of tear jerking to see Minna go since we actually cared about her. But
Right.
still, I think that was still like the only thing that really came from it.
Yeah, the thing
And
is that Midna's character growth, which was pretty interesting, don't get me wrong, but her character growth kind of went, at the expense of, like pretty much the atmosphere around her. Like, like you said, like Link really isn't that interesting. Zelda got interesting and then became uninteresting, again,
yeah, they developed Minna at like the expense of the player's engagement.
Yeah. And I mean, no,
Something
again, like
that
not like it wasn't good, but it's just kind of like, could you not maybe,
one of the big things that made Ocarina stand out was that like, yeah, you got to it was you that tried to save the Deku Tree and failed. You that tried to get the Master Sword and ultimately led Ganondorf into the Sacred Realm and failed and doomed Hyrule. You did it all. You grew from that. You learned. You rose to the top and took Ganondorf on. You became like the big hero of Hyrule yourself. It
right.
was like you got to do it all. Like, in fact,
Yeah, not
even
not
like
Midna running the show.
even and I'm also gonna go on a little tangent here. I mean, like even like the plot twist at the end with Sheik. I'll admit when I went into it knowing full well that Sheik was Zelda because I played like all the Smash games that were out at the time. It was not much of a surprise for me, but the way it unfolded was great. Like think about it. Both Link and Zelda or like in the set, but in like the 7 years that Ganondorf conquered Hyrule, they were both taken away from their safe havens against their will. They both had to
Ron. Oh man.
Zelda was
Oh, Ron,
became
try going back a bit. You cut out.
sorry. Yeah, you and Zelda both were had sort of a loss of innocence, and you know what? Zelda became Sheik from that sort of growth in trying to work to take on Ganondorf. And here's the thing: you were throughout the game that Sheik kind of trained you, and would share you things and actually teach you a few things like how to manage, and even a few like and even explain to you a little bit about how the adult world works. And then later, when you actually find out it's Zelda, you find out that you basically got to play out all the hard work Zelda put into becoming Sheik in that 7 years. And it really was actually a really satisfying twist. Like
That's interesting. You just really liked how it was executed. When you really consider everything that goes on revolving around, Sheik and Link and their connections and all that. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. And then you consider the relationships and how their childhood basically got sapped at the same age. So, and at the same time.
yeah, like yeah, that was the thing. Like I knew going in that Sheik was Zelda, and at first when I was playing Smash, I was like, "What? How are they the same people?" But then when I actually got to play Ocarina and see how it unfolded, I was like, "Yeah, that actually really works. This is a really, really good twist." It's like the Luke, it's like the "I'm your father" of gaming. Like everyone knows it, but it's still worth checking out to see how well it unfolds.
Right.
So yeah, that's another reason why Ocarina's story was the best in my opinion. That's
So you just
you know
so the general idea is that you would just like so you would like Zelda to still keep that balance essentially. Like how you were mentioning the gameplay
yeah.
and how that blends together. And so I'm basically with you on that. I'm like I very much agree with that. I don't think that Breath of the Wild had to do what it did. And like you know what? Since Skyward Sword kind of made the mistake for this story, you just shove it out the way. No, like don't no please don't do that please. I thought that was a bit of a drastic measure and it was a little foolish,
I
but
think it's been said before by both me and Seth. Like Ocarina, that was another thing Ocarina did better. Like the whole Ganondorf wins thing, because we actually
oh
got
yeah,
to play out. We got to play out what the world was like before Ganondorf basically screwed it over. We got to meet everyone. We got to get a feel for ourselves, and then we got the juxtaposition when Ganondorf came and took over, and it made us want to rise up and take him on even more. You
heck,
know?
even with a game like Skyward Sword, where it takes place post demise crushing humanity to like dust, pretty much all of them. I mean, I think even Skyward Sword kind of handled that better because like you don't like you go to the after effects of the place, but it's not like it's slow. It's not like because I mean like once you finally get to meet demise, because I mean you go to these places like you go to like like the the forest, like the general area that of the world, like it isn't too bad. But you go to these like dungeons stuff like that where they're all torn up, raided by enemies, and like they're all broken down and everything. And then you go to Lanayru Desert and you go to like the factory and how like everything is all rusty and torn up and no good anymore and all that. Pretty much from Demise coming down and wrecking up everything in his path. And then the same thing with the fire temple or whatever the heck it was called in Skyward Sword, but and all that. I just felt for a bit I'm like I'm seeing this stuff like, and we consider like Fee is on this mission, and Fee when Fee explains at the end of Skyward, you've beaten Skyward Sword, right? I don't want to spoil it for you, if like
I can't remember
no,
to
but
be honest, but
you've beaten it though.
I know what happens at the end. I was told what I remember what happens. Doesn't feel like
Yeah,
leave.
she goes into this explanation about like the purpose of her goal, why she was so serious, and why. I mean, like it's kind of weird. Even though I didn't care too much for the handholdy aspect of Fee, she kind of like defends herself like within the rules of like her mission. I'm like I didn't like it too much, but I'm like, dang, that kind of makes sense why you were the way you were, you know. And I mean, like, when we think of that, when you look at that stuff, you know, like that's just how bad Demise is. Like, Fee was like so focused, like she was just like, okay, this guy has gotta go, you know, like she was given her mission, she wants you to, hurry up and get it done ASAP, and it's like it's one of the things where like it's like you feel the urgency, even though you haven't been there and you aren't familiarized with the world. You still understand what's going on because well, first of all, you can just see it from like the sheer population of people around. Like humans are hardly existent in Skyward Sword. Like when the humans are rare to see, it's been pretty bad. And I mean, it's not like you need a huge build up to see all the people that were around before. I mean, that's kind of one of those things where no, you just know that's wrong. I mean, I still think the general idea of villain destroys everything. I would still say it was done much better in Ocarina of Time. Don't get me wrong. Even though I like Skyward Sword's story more than Ocarina of Time's, that aspect I thought Ocarina of Time handled a lot better. I'm with you 100% on that. That Ocarina of Time was the best at doing the whole Ganon/Ganondorf wins thing with that one.
Yeah.
But I thought that for Skyward Sword, I think Skyward Sword was it was definitely above Breath of the Wild, but I would probably still say below Ocarina of Time, because Ocarina of Time actually did it in quite a genius way for 1998. Let's be honest here.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. Ocarina. Ocarina had a great story and great execution. I guess with some people nowadays calling it like really cliche and really bland, I guess it was just so passive that people just didn't take the time to like really take it in or anything.
Yeah, and my thing with Breath of the Wild story and why I have like such an issue with until Ganon wins kind of thing is because like you see ruins and stuff like that. I mean, you can see that. Calamity Ganon, he wrecked up the place, but it's not like Skyward Sword where enemies are roaming throughout the place and they're patrolling the place or something like that, and they're constantly trying to kill Zelda. It's nothing like that. It's just like these villages are destroyed. There's a couple of enemies chilling out, if any at all. But it's like there's a couple of enemies chilling out here and there and such like that. And then there's like still a lot of people, like still chilling out in Breath of the Wild, which I thought was like the weirdest thing. I mean, I get it; it's 100 years later, but it just seems like I don't know. I just feel like I've seen it better, if that makes sense. It's just like I know Calamity again. He's a dangerous dude, but I mean, especially when I seen it in Skyward Sword, where Demise was, of course, he's proved himself to be infinitely more dangerous than Ganon/Ganondorf could ever hope to be, because he got uncomfortably close to killing everybody, but yeah. As far as seeing the effects of it, and even then you can see like how the piece of the sky. It's one of those things where like Demise had like such an influence that Hylia can only grab like a handful of the earth and bring it up, and you just look down, you're just like, dang, it's just like
you're right.
And when it gets to the point where like Hylia had to cut humanity off from Demise so hard that like people forgot what the surface of the earth looks like. I'm like, that's kind of crazy. That people are forgetting what it looks like because it's just been that long, and they've had to been separated from the world below so long because Demise's influence was just that bad. And as we see near the end of the finale of Skyward Sword, I think it was actually more of Girahim's doing, but Girahim is he's an underling of Demise. Girahim he just shows that with Girahim he's really cocky throughout the game. But he shows near the end that he could just flood you with enemies until like if he felt like it. It shows that like if humanity got down there, they would get messed up like really quickly, and you could just see those things where like you don't really grow with the world, but you understand why exactly Demise is so bad and why he's an issue. And again, when Zelda gets down to the surface, like enemies immediately begin chasing her, and like she has so many near-death experiences. According to like the people you talk to, on the surface, like not people, the creatures, they say several times that like they she was always on the run from something. Like I don't know. it just kind of shows how bad his influence was and how desperate he is to win, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And although he technically did not win, it's in a similar vein as Ocarina of Time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway, I hate to say this again, but next question.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I'm like, we should probably move on to the next one because we were going a
Yeah.
bit for this one. So okay, I was just looking at it for a second. I was just looking at the questions. What are your thoughts on 3D Zelda's more vertical approach to dungeon design?
More vertical meaning. I'm sorry, I'm kind of out of it right now. But what do you mean by vertical?
Vertical, like other Zelda games, just like maybe just jump, like you're like, all right, maybe you have a couple of levels, you just jump down, you go left to right, up and down, all over the place. But like like in Zelda games, you like maybe have something way up there or way down there, or something like that. It's just like it involves more looking up and down in the world rather than just
Well,
see to just taking what you see
I
at
think
pretty much face
I
value.
think
Not quite,
I
but you know what I
think
mean.
I think Ocarina. You mean like how they sort of use 3D space? I think Ocarina handled it pretty well, but Majora, in terms of dungeon design, in that sense, was probably the peak of the series thus far in terms of dungeons. My opinion, though.
In terms of so you feel like Majora's Mask has the best Zelda dungeons to date.
In my opinion,
Oh, okay,
of the 3D games.
other 3D games.
Yeah, of the 3D games at least. Like
Okay.
there were only four of them, but yeah, I do think all four of them were good.
Yeah, I mean, my other thing with Majora's Mask. I mean, granted, Majora's Mask was a rushed Zelda game. It's already, everybody knows that it was done in a year. It was a rushed Zelda game, so it really couldn't have more dungeons like that because dungeons were always well thought out. And spreading that across like put that all over the game probably wouldn't have worked. They probably would have ran out of time. So I get Majora's Mask position, but yeah, I do see that. How you say that? Except for, and I know I've already talked about this with other people before. Not so much on my channel, but I don't care for the Great Bay Temple. Like that will. It's not like
Thanks for helping us get married.
Oh, you talking to somebody over there, Ron?
No, someone was just saying something. Anyway, go on.
Oh, okay, but yeah, I mean, I will say definitely especially with Majora's Mask, this design was more clever and more interesting and a bit more of a head scratcher. And I will say I definitely admire. I mean, as far as like quality contained into one dungeon, yeah, I would say prefer like Majora's Mask dungeons because they are quite good. I mean, like for especially probably throughout the 3D ones, yeah, I could probably see why you would say they were one of the best ones. My only thing is that there's just so little of them, so in a sense, I would kind of be more inclined to move towards Ocarina of Time. And I'm not trying to use a whole quantity or quantity versus quality thing, but I'm like the thing is Ocarina of Time dungeons are still good, and while none of them really reach the level of Majora's Mask good, they're still pretty good in their own right, and there's more of that quality spread throughout the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think yeah. And on the subject of Majora, what dungeon in Majora was your favorite?
Favorite one, easily the Stone Tower, my favorite one by far.
I mean, I kind of like the more vertical, more confused, more open navigation of the Snowhead Temple. The best.
No,
I actually,
Snow was cool.
and I also liked a lot of the placement for the stray fairies in Snowhead.
Yeah, I
And
like the Stray Fairy system and how like it was basically like a little mini rescue mission thingy. I really enjoyed that.
yeah, and I actually, and yeah, it was when you got in, it was like immediately intimidating to find the right path pathway, but um, but like that all and like sorry, that made I think that added to the more Metroidvania aspect of all these dungeons, and I also liked just how well it made use of 3D space. compared to the rest of the dungeons made good use of 3D space, but Snowhead Temple really did it well, especially with the giant pillar and how you'd have to and all the floors there, and even just like the whole more cryptic nature of that with having to backtrack to on certain parts and bring it to certain levels. Yeah, that was all done really brilliantly.
All right, yeah, I see where you're coming from with that one. I don't know if it counts, but the Ikana Fortress, that always felt like a dungeon to me. Like in a
What I
sense, the
what ancient
Ikana Canyon.
ancient
What's up?
ancient castle of Icona.
Yeah, yes, yeah, that or whatever.
That was an overall pretty solid dungeon until I found out I had to backtrack for the powder keg. No one liked.
I thought it was pretty fun though.
I think that the dungeon beyond that was actually pretty fun.
And so I guess you could say there's really 5 dungeons in it, but I mean it's not. Of course, it's not like a solid. It's not a main dungeon. You can tell because there's no like really main thing going on with it. But I mean we still go to it in the main line. But it's not like it's not like what we know Zelda dungeons as, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It was
As
a
for
very,
Stone Tower Temple,
very straight line. But I'm sorry. What you
as
said?
for Stone Tower Temple, I don't remember having too much trouble navigating the dungeon. Not like I did with Snowhead and Great Bay, but with Stone Tower, I think what made up for it was the puzzle difficulty.
Oh yeah,
Because
I really like the
puzzle wise, it was the hardest. Navigation wise, not so much, but especially like the first half of it does seem a little more railroaded than Snowhead and Great Bay, but in terms of puzzles, it was brilliant. It made use of all 3 masks and just in general, really great, really clever design. Yeah, I liked it.
Okay, yeah, and if you guys don't know about if you don't know exactly how I feel about the Great Bay Temple, I mean my thing with the Great Bay Temple and why I dislike it quite a bit is only just the fact that there's just too many moments in it because it's a pretty broad dungeon, but there's just too many moments there where I'm like, why would I look there kind of moments, I mean, and granted, some Zelda in general is known for doing that having those kind of moments, where it's just like, okay, so why would I look there? Breath of the Wild does it, Ocarina of Time does it. Pretty much every Zelda game has at least one moment where you're like, okay, so why would I go there? Or why would I look there?
To be honest, I actually kind of found the Water Temple to be a little more confusing than the Great Bay Temple, or at least on my first playthroughs of each.
I mean,
Rob.
Yeah, I'm just sorry. I'm just thinking on my answer, but with the Water Temple, I mean, for me on the Water Temple, I mean, it's quite convoluted. I mean, don't get me wrong, and I mean, like it can be a little daunting, but I mean, again, like my thing is, it doesn't really have any moments where I'm like, because I mean, it's just like the Water Temple to me is just quite intimidating, if that makes sense. But I'm like, I can look around the room for a bit. I'm like, oh, okay, that's where I'm supposed to go. I mean, like, in the Great Bay Temple, I'm like, I sit there for a moment. I'm just like, what? Why was that there? And I just kind of get a little annoyed with it.
Like they both.
I mean, I still
they're
take
both in water and
Breath of the Wild's just like, all right, here's a 10-minute dungeon and then get out of here. I don't like that, but I was still.
I mean, like I remember. I mean, even like it can be argued that like the Divine Beast actually kind of brought back that whole sort of trope that was abandoned after Majora's Mask with dungeons where you had to like change part of the dungeon in order to solve a puzzle.
I mean, I welcome the concept coming back, but I mean, it didn't come back into.
But I think Boris was the closest Divine Beast to really realizing that potential.
I can agree with you on that. Yeah, I can agree with you on that. For the most part, it was just kind of like, here you go. Yeah, it's kind of back, and then it just kind of it like just stopped. I'm like, what the heck, brother? What are you doing? Like, yeah, I didn't get
Again,
that. But back to
I
this whole vertical
think
approach
part
thing before we deviate a little farther than I'd like. Uh, the vertical approach about it. I mean, I'm kind of on the same boat as you. Same boat as you. You know, I kind of like how I have to do more than just like take what I pretty much just take what I see. Take what's at face value and go with it. Not that I didn't like that because I mean, like I look at like other 2D Zelda games like okay, well I got this in there. All right, let's see what we can do here. I don't mind that, but I just like that. I like having that that 3D space that they work with in the 3D games, and just having like where it gets more vertical. You have to look around like, oh, okay, yeah. I like that a lot.
yeah,
That's my take
I
anyway.
see. Anyway, next question.
Yeah, let's get on to the next one here for tonight, and that is Ocarina of Time's Hyrule Field is undoubtedly one of the largest controversies in the Zelda series. Period. What are your thoughts on this location?
It sucks. Like apart from the I think apart from maybe a couple Skulltulas, one Heart Piece, Lon Lon Ranch, and the Big Poe Hunt, and probably a few other things I'm forgetting about, which I shouldn't be, but still, what was there to do in Hyrule Field? I mean,
In Hyrule Field, you can find those like nearly identical caves.
to be honest, the
Yeah,
world was great. The world of Hyrule Field was um okay, not the world. I mean the music of it. Why did I say world? The music of it was great, and I think it was pretty epic, traversing through it in a sense, especially with Epona, but at the same time, when it came to the side stuff part of it, it was lacking, and there was a lot of fat to it, I guess.
it pretty much just acts as a means to like traverse with like side quests and everything. And you know what? I will just say, Hyrule Field. Like I will say this. Yeah, it sucks. It's not that good to be honest. It's like even for 1998. I mean, come on. You look at a link. You look at a Link to the Past. You look at Hyrule Field. Then you look at the standard Hyrule Field. You look at Link to the Past, and you look at Ocarina of Time. A Link to the Past, easy. Like Ocarina of Time sucks. But here's my thing with it. Like I understand that Ocarina of Time's Hyrule Field sucks. But my thing is, I don't get why it's a controversy because when you look at all the other like infinitely more interesting areas surrounding Hyrule Field, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, if there's all these other interesting places and one of those places sucks, I mean, like, is it really that big of a deal? Like, I like Death Mountain's interesting to me. Gorilla Desert's interesting to me. Sora's Domain is interesting to me. Lake Hylia is more interesting to me. I mean, it's kind of those things where I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
Hyrule Field sucks, but I'm like, why is it that big of a problem? Like, I mean, like, when I see a lot of people talking about
everything else. Yeah, everything else about Ocarina's world was interesting. I'll admit, everything else was pretty good, and in a sense, it got the job done. But still, Hyrule Field is still a pretty big part of the world.
I mean, yeah, it's a big part. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not. It's not wrong to want more out of that. But I mean, and I get it. If you don't like Ocarina of Time, that's fine. But I mean, like, it's one of those things where, like, why are people so hell bent on talking about like holding that one area? Like, it's one thing to not like the area, but it's another thing if like you're holding it against the game when there's so much around it that's infinitely more interesting than that one place. I'm like, why does that bother you so much? If you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of the things I'm like,
Exactly.
okay, I get it. It's like the center of Hyrule, in general, in Ocarina of Time. But I'm like, but there's, I mean, okay, but there's other places around it that are more
there are,
interesting.
especially like I was saying when I was talking about why it's my favorite. I liked the Metroidvania aspect of the other elements, though. Like when you start the game, you could find Lost Woods and find the Forest Temple, but not be able to go into it yet. You could, when you step in the Hyrule Field for the first time, you could find Hylia, find and then find the water temple, but not be able to go into it yet. Even like Gerudo Valley was there, but you got like the idea that you weren't supposed to be there.
Right. Yeah, did you cut out? Or
Ocarinas.
you were talking about Gerudo Valley. Go back to that. You cut out.
I just said Gerudo Valley, like, and like you got sort of the idea that you weren't supposed to be there, but you could still see what it was like, and even get to like Hylia that way. But like, yeah, that was sort of the thing. Like everything, even though Hyrule Field was pretty flat and
It's
boring,
trash.
everything else about the world was interesting, and even had kind of that extra hint of Metroidvania to it that the series. Okay, maybe like the series, like before after Ocarina and before Breath of the Wild, didn't really like match, in my opinion. Cause still there?
Yeah, I'm still. If I'm not saying anything, I'm probably closely listening. Like that's just how I am.
Sorry, but yeah.
We're talking. We're talking Zelda. We're talking my forte. I listen closely.
Right. So yeah, with with Hyrule. So yeah, that's just sort of the consensus. That's just sort of my view on Ocarina's world in general. It's everything that's not Hyrule Field was interesting.
Yeah, that's exactly how I am about it. I mean, I don't really need to take this much into that one. I mean, like that's the same way. I feel the exact same way. I'm like, you know, I'm even sort of the same way with Skyward Sword, where they talk about how much they don't like, you know, like the sky part of it. And don't get me wrong. Again, the sky world in Skyward Sword freaking sucks. Like it's lame. Like don't get me wrong, but I'm like, but what about Fair Woods, Elder Volcano, and Linear Desmond? Like they're like, yeah, but it's still the sky world. But I'm like. But I mean, there's still other places to go. You don't. The sky world is the sky is not the only place in the game. Like if the game was nothing but the sky and like a couple of islands, I don't think islands can really warrant themselves as individual places. But like I mean, like we have like three other like over other worlds, excuse me, overworlds below. Excuse me, getting a bit of a cough here. When you get, you just look at the other overworlds, in Skyward Sword, I'm like, okay, let me go on. The sky sucks, but what about the other ones? And like, it just seems like you're trying to hold that against the game, and I don't know. That just feels a little unfair, if that makes sense to me. And the same thing with Ocarina of Time and Hyrule Field. Yeah, it sucks, but why would you hold that one thing against the game? Like, come on, open up your mind a bit, please.
Yeah. Anyway, now that Hyrule Field's out of the way. Next question.
Yeah, that's basically it. Next question. Ocarina of Time's... No, I was just going to read the exact same question. Do you think Breath of the Wild is an appropriate response to the controversy Skyward Sword received?
Not really.
Oh, boy. Let's hear it.
I don't know. Like, I think it was... I mean, honestly, I'm gonna say what you probably have to say about it. It's the other extreme. It's the other Breath of the Wild in general. Yeah, sure, Skyward Sword was too linear. Same with like couple other 3D Zelda games before. But yeah, Breath of the Wild was the other extreme. Like it was too non-linear to the point where a lot of the game felt broken, kind of exploitable. Like it's like
Breath of the Wild is kind of like the I know you are, but what am I kind of like response to like Skyward Sword. I'm like, no, stop.
Like it's just sort of like it was like outright made to be like what Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess weren't, in a sense. And that's kind of why they were hyped, because that's kind of why Breath of the Wild was hyped, because it wasn't Skyward Sword.
Right.
Just like what happened with Twilight Princess. It was hyped up because it wasn't Majora's Mask or Wind Waker.
And then Wind Waker was hyped up because it wasn't like Majora's Mask, and Majora's Mask was hyped up because it wasn't like Ocarina of Time, and same with Ocarina. It's kind of a cycle with Zelda. It's like, hey,
who said?
not like the one
okay,
before.
okay, like Okay, like honest. Okay, wait, Robert.
So
Rob,
what's going on?
before 2011, who was saying Ocarina was a decadent was a drastic blemish on the series? Who was saying that it was a bad? Who was saying it ruined everything about the series
Saying
before
Ocarina of Time
2011?
before 2011, who was
Yeah,
saying it? I
yeah.
mean,
Who was saying that? Everyone was praising it at the time as the best thing ever.
I wasn't saying that, like it was. I wasn't saying that, I was talking about, like how it was this, but or I was just talking about how like 3D Zelda was commonly considered the next step in the series, not necessarily that people are trash talking, or is that just a question you just had for me? I mean, if that's the case, then now.
Yeah, because even in one of your videos, I remember you saying that when Ocarina of Time came out, it caused the biggest divide in the fan base, and like really, like at the time, everyone loved it. Yeah, sure, maybe now its quality is heavily debated, but at the time, there was like no questioning it. The game was a masterpiece.
I mean, I see what you're saying. I mean, like, I mean, it's one of those things where let's see, how can I put that? Because that is a good question, but with Ocarina of Time, I mean, like, and this is with anything new. Like, if something is supposed to be in some way or another like a drastic change, which Ocarina of Time wasn't that drastic, but I mean, put your mindset in 1998. Holy crap and everything. I mean, you're always with as with everything, the division becomes pretty dang wide. And granted, I can't speak exactly for it because I was not born in before 1998, so I wouldn't know exactly how it was built up to
I
that.
was
I've just kind of spoke from what
I
I've
was
heard from
born
other.
in
I'm so what's up?
I was only I was only born in like '99, so I couldn't speak. I couldn't speak. This is just like hearsay because I don't remember. Because I remember hearing that Ocarina's quality wasn't really debated until 2011 when the remake came out.
I mean, hold on. I said that a little too fast. Excuse me. I sort of just like played around from what I've heard from my mom because she played Ocarina of Time back then, so she knows all about the Zelda hype and all that back then because she used to play the old Zeldas and all that. And what I've just generally heard because I've seen what other people had to say about it, like looking through like things like Game Informer or other websites and how other people perceive Ocarina of Time at the time. They're like it's like. Well, I'm not too sure I'm on board with this or something like that. And I've seen, just going through Twitter sometimes, seeing people that have mentioned that. So, I mean, they were definitely around. I know that. Maybe not on. I mean, the thing I'm thinking about, when you're mentioning about, Ocarina of Time's quality being debated, I just don't think it was on much of a vocal scale. Because, I mean, especially now with the quality of older
Yeah,
games, it's definitely getting debated a lot more these days. Which, I
but
do
yeah. I
I do
mean,
feel that to a degree sometimes it gets a little out of hand because people hold like impossibly high standards for games that couldn't have possibly met those said standards back then. Which
and
you
as
know,
for Breath of the Wild's exploration, again, I've been saying it before, but it also kind of tried to again do Majora's Mask, make you feel like the quest you were taking on was bigger than yourself. It was about
right?
trying to do Majora's Mask in that sense, but Majora's Mask pulled it off better because like in Breath of the Wild, yeah, your main challenge was nature and all the crazy climates, but
And
most of
it
it
did
could
achieve
just be
that. Let's be honest.
most of it could just be alleviated by buying the right clothing. It's not like
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I'm
the
like,
game didn't put you through like any like real hell through it, or any present you with any like real challenges or strategies to conquer the climates.
right,
All
right. I
you
mean,
had to
like,
do was just
I'm sorry. What's up?
in Majora's Mask, you were basically tasked to save the world in 3 days from the moon crushing, and it's not and like they provided you with tools with enough to make it convenient, but not enough to where you could basically where it basically crapped on the entire idea of Majora. People even accuse Majora 3D of doing this, but I think even with that game, that game at least managed to keep the sense of fear that Majora was well known for.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
still tense up, when the world's getting close to ending and I'm trying to complete some dumb side quest for somebody, and I'm just like, hey, could you hurry up? I still feel kind of, I get a little anxious about that. Just getting back on the topic of Breath of the Wild, it's not that Breath of the Wild doesn't achieve this. I mean, it does tap into the theme of conquering the wild, but like you said. When it kind of comes down to, oh, shoot, it's a little too cold out here, let me just put on my winter jacket. It's just kind of like, oh, that's it? So like no management like that. There's
Like,
no.
maybe this is.
And I know you mentioned this before.
This is
like
something.
you were saying how if the game really put you like you were I know you had just said this, but we're talking about this the other day about how if the game really made you go through what it would really be like to be in a blizzard or be out in the cold or be out in the heat and all the crap you have to go through so that you're just the world is difficult and you're just fighting through it the hardest you can. That would make it a very interesting game. But when you're just oh crap, oh it's too hot out here, just put on some stuff really quick and well, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of oh.
In fact, I don't know. I mean, maybe this is just kind of an idea I have. I don't know how this would go in execution. I think I said this the other day, but I'm saying for the podcast, I'm thinking maybe the first time they were gonna make you go through a really cold climate, what they could have done was present you with fire arrows and torches throughout. You light the torches with fire arrows and use the that sort of torch as you use that sort of candle as your sort of safe zone, kind of like what Metroid Prime 2 did with the Dark World. And you keep using this as your means of navigating through the cold. And when you do so, and it keeps getting harder and harder as you do so. But when you eventually pull through and get through enough, you're rewarded with the warm doublet.
Right, because then you're like, oh crap, I went through all this stuff, man. It was hard out here, but finally I got something. Now I can tolerate the cold, and it makes it feel worth it. Not just, hey, let me just cook up some hot chili peppers, and then I can go out in the cold. What? Okay,
yeah.
Or you could just do that, and it just it feels just. And I said it before, Breath of the Wild feels like such an anticlimactic game. I mean, granted, even if it did greatly succeed in how we just mentioned it, it wouldn't be the best Zelda game to me because I mean, again, it pushed so much out of the way and for for its own ambitions, and I didn't really care for how it did that. I mean, it's kind of the things where I don't mind them trying to try new stuff, but by trying to reset the series so far, they've ended up getting rid of stuff that worked, and that's my problem with Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, that was sort of the thing. They really did try to evoke that same feeling Majora's Mask had, where it was less about the kind of power you were getting, and more about taking on a quest that was bigger than you.
Right.
They really did try to evoke that with Breath of the Wild, but it didn't work because the game was just so exploitable that it didn't.
You cut out after did it. Right?
You there?
Right. Yeah. You cut out after didn't.
Yeah, it just didn't. It just didn't do it as well because it was so easy to come by the proper clothing and armor to beat to survive the temperatures that it didn't really matter. It just it just sort of dates all the way back to Ocarina of Time.
Yeah,
you know?
And the thing, I think the only exception to that where I can understand or where I wouldn't feel as feel as much like I'm cheating out the theme of the game is when I felt like a fire rod, because I mean those things aren't exactly the easiest thing to find in Breath of the Wild. I'm like, if I use a fire rod to try to cheese the cold a bit, okay, that's cool, It's but that's but again, it's kind of like you mentioned. That's something you have to go out of your way to find. You know what I mean? If it was something like that,
yeah,
I'm okay, that's cool, but not just let me cook up some.
Yeah.
Oh crap! It's too hot out in the Gerudo Desert. Let me just go over and cook up some some frosty fish or something like that. You're just like, what? Make them some cool hot cocoa or. That's an oxymoron, but some cool cocoa or something like that. And all of a sudden, whew, I'm good to go. What? It's okay. And usually, like you'll just find that stuff by just playing the game. It's not like yeah, it just didn't feel right. It just felt like it's kind of like you were just mentioning. Like the system, the theme of the game feels like it's too easy to exploit or just slip and slide around it.
Yeah, I mean, again, people really liked that aspect of Majora where you felt small in the world around, and I think that was sort of the motivation in Breath of the Wild because, yeah, not only were people complaining about Skyward Sword, but Majora's Mask was also getting its cult following.
And just really
So,
quick, just talking about the progressive feeling of it. I know this isn't necessarily tied in with the wild part of Breath of the Wild, but in terms of progression and really feeling like like you're a small person in a world that's much bigger than you, I felt that since Calamity Ganon is basically a parasite, it would have been pretty interesting to see like as the further you get into the game, like his influence over the world, like his goopy stuff slowly just making its way around. Like I don't know if you played the game Prey 2017 earlier this year. I know I've talked about it quite a bit on Twitter, and I love the game to bits. But in Prey, the further you make it through the game, like the more the alien, the Typhon, start to take over Talos One, and like really by the end of the game, you can really see the place just going to crap, and how like they like it went from like a place where like a place that your company built to just like a place that now the aliens run. It would have been pretty interesting to see
it's kind of
like
like, yeah,
Ganon
it's
slowly
kind of
just like
like,
run the
it's even
place.
kind of, it's even kind of like Majora, um, where like by the passing day, the world of Termina just gets more oppressive,
Yeah,
and
basically like that. Yeah, like it would just be like Breath of the Wild. I mean, the closest that Breath of the Wild ever really gets to that is, oh hey, look, the enemy's tier color changed. Wow, and then like it just never does anything besides that. I'm like, what? That is so uninteresting.
exactly, yeah.
But that's enough on this. Enough on this question. We're hitting 2 hours and going on 2 hours and 7 minutes. Let's go to the next question here for tonight, and that is, which 3D Link do you feel has the best personality? Nice and quick one here.
Like Hero of Time in terms of just sheer character development. Hero of Wins in terms of like just like personality, like straight character interactions.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just
but
just
in
that.
terms of like the action,
Oh, okay.
in terms of like the actual growth and development, I'd hand it to Hero of Time. But yeah, what about you?
So for me, and I know we talked about this a little while ago, I think that Skyward Sword probably has the for both personality as growth and both growth as a Link and just like the personality expresses. Skyward Sword Link knocks it out of the park for me. I'll try to keep it brief here, but I like how his general reactions are because I mean when he's mad I mean well really Skyward Sword
Yeah,
Link is probably the angriest Link out of all. He's always getting mad in that game, but I mean like when he's
yeah.
mad, he gets
Um,
really mad, and you can see that especially as the further he gets into the game. By the end of the game, he is just so done with everything, and you can tell that
sure.
he's because basically it's a your princess is in another castle kind of situation for him, and he's getting sick of it. Like it's getting annoying, and and he's got this dude that Lord Girahim that keeps taunting him, and everything. The further he gets in, like and I can understand that stuff gets old. Like it's just kind of like, man, can I just please just get this job over with? And then plus,
I got it. Anyway,
and
uh,
I'm just go. Don't get me wrong. I'm almost done. Don't get me wrong. I'm almost done. I don't want to say don't get me wrong, but I'm almost done. But and just how when he was like explaining things to characters and how he moved his arms and he brought his arms up and just the friendly look at his face and just how he generally just reacted towards things. I just thought he was a very organic Link to me. Felt very
yeah,
down to earth, and that's why I liked him
yeah.
so much.
As for the rest of the links, well, I'd say, yeah, we got a clear consensus for Ocarina, Wind Waker, and Skyward Sword. Majora was more or less an extension of what Ocarina did, right?
Yeah,
Twilight Princess Link had like no involvement, had little to no involvement in the story. And Breath of the Wild Link, we knew there was nothing going for him besides the fact that he had war trauma. But that was it.
does he really have war trauma? I mean, I thought he
Well,
said once when he put
that's the theory. That's like the theory. That could be the reason why he's so unexpressive because of war trauma, but it makes sense, but that even then there's still there you still can't just make that the overall like character trait. You have
Right.
to
I mean,
do more with
dude. I
it.
mean, like you can know people in real life that have war trauma that have more personality than Breath of the Wild like that. That's like in his situation, he's just being unrealistic. And I mean, granted,
Yeah.
PTSD has like several effects and such like that. But I mean, like I don't know, especially like since all it takes for him to break out of that. 'Cause, I mean, you can just see from like his responses that he has to people that he's very expressive vocally. Unfortunately, he doesn't really act that out physically, so there's really no connection to it. But I'm like, if all it takes is if a little takes for him to get shot by a laser to have more personality, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like,
Anyway, next.
yeah, I'm just rambling at this point. Let's just move on here. So Grezzo has hinted at making another Zelda remake, with a lot of people feeling that it's going to be Skyward Sword HD. What would you like out of this potential remake?
I don't know. I think we've had too many Zelda remakes, in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of remakes
As
that
for
was kind of. I mean, like, I guess the Wind Waker HD. I mean, I guess that was a pretty good remake. I guess for anything, if just the fast sale and such. But I mean, for the most part, I mean, it's kind of just there. But I mean, I do get
Majora,
the fast sale makes it a
Majora,
lot better.
yeah. Let's see. With Majora 3D, that was mainly made for the people that couldn't get into the original game. Like, and I'll admit, I couldn't get into the original game at first. And my preferred way to play it is the 3DS version. Admitted, admittedly, because
Same.
yeah, there are times where I really couldn't stand the original. But yeah, Twilight Princess HD, it didn't fix any it didn't fix any fundamental flaws with the game. It just added some like new content, and I think that's a part of the thing. Like at Beyond Wind Waker HD, the complaints people have about most of the complaints, at least people have about like Majora or Twilight Princess or Skyward Sword, those are all complaints based on like a level of appeal, not like fundamental flaws like the not like fundamental flaws like the sailing or the iron boots or anything like that.
Right.
So it feels kind of pointless remaking them. Like you'd have to you would have to change up like pretty crucial parts of the game to appeal to a certain demographic of the series of the fans.
And I think that's just kind of the
So
problem with Zelda, just in general, is the fact that like Zelda's very experimental, and well, I don't mind so much the gimmicks being exchanged, but I mean like as far as like more general core elements goes, like Zelda's always switching stuff in and out, and I don't like that at all. Like like all right, there's one, all right, oh we got Majora's Mask over there. All right, here's a quest list, objectives list that you could kind of check out. Oh, well, now it's gone again. We'll see it back until Breath of the Wild. Don't know why the heck they even did that to begin with. And then you got things like, oh, you got
I
the Minish Cap, which introduces extra sword combat abilities. Oh, well, you won't see that again. And then it goes into Twilight Princess, then it just disappears forever. I'm like, where the heck did that go? Like, and I hate it
yeah,
when
I
Zelda
think
does that.
that's I don't know. I think the complaints people have about Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword were based on, they were just based on a level of appeal. There's no point in like remaking them. Maybe if they wanted to port the HD, maybe if they wanted to port Skyward Sword to a newer console for the newer gen people. I guess that would. I guess that's not a bad idea. It's just if they're gonna sell it as a remake, just no, that's not gonna fly with me because
I feel a little different towards that because
they can't change. I mean, sure they could work out a few things, but they can't change too much without like ruining the main ticket. Oh, how should I say this? They can't change too much without ruining the meat of the game.
yeah, I mean, as far as like the main content goes, like like the story and stuff like that, don't leave that alone. Don't mess with that at all. But I mean, like when I look at it from like when I look at stuff that could have been better, like maybe adding in more traditional controls, I know that would require a lot of readjustments of certain game parts. But I mean, I feel that
Like
like I mean,
a
I like
lot
the motion
of
controls, but I feel
redoing
like
that.
it would just like the appeal in general would just be a lot better if they just went to normal controls and then readjust a lot of scenarios to fit like just hitting the B button instead of worrying about all this adjustments. Though I feel like it would drag in a greater audience, and then they can still have the traditional like 3D Zelda controls where like here you can adjust where you could swing in 3D Zelda again. So I'm kind of sad they took that out in Breath of the Wild, but it is what
Yeah,
it is. But
yeah, even with Skyward Sword, I guess I mean I guess if they really wanted to fix some things that people didn't like about the original, they'd have to really just completely re-optimize the game
yeah, I mean,
for
really, all I want out of a potential Skyward Sword HD is traditional controls and simply add more to the worlds down there because I mean they are pretty linear and I think they could benefit from
more
just extra locations being in the game.
more just more content. Like
Yeah, that's
Twilight
really
Princess
all I
H
want out of a Skyward Sword HD.
Twilight Princess HD had more content technically. There was the Cave of Shadows, there was a hero mode, there was the amiibo support.
Oh,
That's
speaking of hero
but
mode, can we
that's
talk about how Majora's Mask 3D did not get a hero mode? I was so
yeah,
annoyed by that.
that's because that's because people thought the game was pretty hard as is.
I mean, I think it is too, but I'm like, give me a hero mode. I don't give a crap. I don't. I seriously don't care. Like, just give me that anyway. I want it.
And they made the bosses more aggressive, but that you couldn't use multiple solutions to beat them anymore. Like if we're on that subject, yeah, I actually did like how there were more than one solution to taking on certain bosses. Like I remember with Georg specifically, he if you were skilled enough, you could avoid fighting him in the water and basically just keep getting him on land. Whereas Majora 3D basically forced you
Yeah,
into
it
the
locks
water
you into the
for
water.
it sort of locked you into the it was a good way to add variety to the way the original did it. It was a good way to add variety to the bosses without making it just shoot exploit Ganon with bomb arrows to win sort of thing. Because the extra solutions presented were actually clever and were more than just
I mean, I get that, but I mean, I do kind of like how they do add twists to it. Although I mean, I do agree that the I know you mentioned that the server one time about how the twin mode fight lasts a little longer than what it should, which I do agree that it does last quite a bit of time in Majora's Mask 3D. But I will take that over the original fight any day because it was just
at the original.
the original twin mode fight. I'm like, oh
You,
woohoo, yeah, it's just
in the original twin mode fight, you could shoot the end of his with light
I
arrows
hate doing
and
that. Like I'm serious. Like I
avoid
don't
using
miss
it.
that.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, the original fight was not that interesting, but but I mean, at least it was over with compared to the 3DS version.
Yeah, but I do like how the Giant's Mask does. Actually, don't you still have to like? How do you? I forgot. How do you get to kill one of the twin mold, and then you get the Giant's Mask, and you kill the other one? I
Yeah,
think you do actually just shoot them
that's
with
how it
both.
worked in.
Yeah,
That's how it worked in. Whereas in the original, yeah, you got the Giant's Mask in the dungeon,
yeah, you
and
killed him in Igor for it.
you didn't even have to use it.
Yeah, but I do just I mean like I get that yeah it was over with, but I mean I personally I just prefer how it was done the 3D version where it was just more interesting to me because
I don't know.
I'm a sucker for like variety. But then
I
again
don't know.
though you mentioned these other alternatives, so I think it's kind of like you're either
I
gonna
think
like it or you're either
alternatives.
not.
I think alternatives. Oh, yeah, that's what it comes down to. Alternatives and solution variety are pretty important to the Zelda series. What's not though is exploitable solutions.
Yeah, which
That's
yeah. So
like
yeah.
when it. Yeah, I think the key thing that even like 2D Mario games like Super Mario World get pretty right is when you're able is like when other solutions require some extra thought or extra skill to find.
Oh yeah, Super Mario World is insane. That game is
Yes.
borderline sadistic with some of the stuff you have to pull off with skill, especially
Oh
in
yeah.
Star World or Special World, excuse me.
Oh wow, Special World.
Ooh, that's something for another
That
time.
was but that's Mario, not
Yeah, that's not Zelda. But yeah, so that's pretty much all we have to say about this last question here for tonight. But yeah, guys, that was our thoughts on these questions about 3D Zelda games. I'm sure this is actually the longest podcast we've done yet, probably because it's about a topic I am very interested in. But yeah, Ron, thank you for coming on here. Quite honored that you were even
no
coming
problem.
on here in the first place, because it's not often I meet a Zelda buff that knows Zelda pretty much as I do. So it was nice to have you on. Thank you for coming on tonight.
No problem, man. It was nice being on the podcast as well.
All right, cool. I was just
See
gonna
you
ask if
guys.
I enjoyed myself, and I was gonna ask if you enjoyed it, but you just said you liked the podcast. So yeah, glad you enjoyed yourself.
Yep, no problem. That
All
was
right,
actually pretty fun.
all right, cool. So yeah, guys,
All
I'm
right.
RoberOnocle, and this was Ron, and those were our thoughts on these questions for tonight, and we will see you guys next time.